such a being, referring to the Buddha. And of course, we see in the artwork, especially in the Tibetan culture, we see how they are trying to explain these marks of perfection. So you can see, look at the Buddha statue. These special marks are pointed out. So, and then I have some general questions for all of you. Why is the Buddha referred to as an extraordinary person, Acharya Pukkala, in the scriptures? What qualities or characteristics set the Buddha apart from ordinary human beings? How does the Buddha's life and awakening demonstrate his extraordinary nature? What does it mean to be a Mahapurisa, great person? And how does the Buddha fulfill this role? And lastly, how does the Buddha's extraordinary wisdom and compassion continue to impact the world today? So these are some general questions I'm presenting to everyone. Or whatever you think is good for our audience, please feel free to share your wisdom, your insights. So anyone? Okay, Venerable Frida from Florida.
Thank you so much for having me. I figured no one raised their hand, so I should want to save time and go first. Salutations to all the venerables, most venerables, ayahs, bhikkhus, bhikkhunis. The Buddha 2,600 years ago obviously demonstrated unprecedented level of patience, tolerance, and endurance. I find it very realistic to study the Buddha and compare what he went through and what we're going through now. It's safe to say maybe he went through even more things. You know, back in the day, certain laws did not exist, and murders were prevalent. Violence were, more atrocious than the modern day wars, than modern days laws, the world court, municipality, jurisdiction, the applicable laws that we have here today. So it's difficult to imagine. However, because the Buddha went first and demonstrated such loving kindness, compassion, and understanding, even when people were trying to kill him, like his cousin, and even enduring praise and blame. Most recently, the Catholic Pope, Pope Leo the 14th, it hasn't even been, from what I read, not even a day, and people were already calling him names left to right, up and down. Buddhism doesn't exempt such praise or blame either. I find it clinically beneficial in studying and replicating as much as we can as humans in modern day, studying his life and how we can use those examples to us, comfort us in so many ways, comfort us in the midst of trying times, in the midst of our own bad karma, in the midst of voting elections when leaders are misbehaving, when there's injustice, inequality in the world. I find myself losing my mother 3 months ago, and the many things that's happened to me in my life, to be comforting when applying the Dhamma to my own life, to realize that even after the Buddha achieved enlightenment, he had to endure even more suffering and even more pain. However, that suffering was lessened and mitigated by and through the teachings of the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. Um, you know, Suffering can be awesome. If you learn how to suffer, you can suffer less. And that's what's so awesome about Vesak here in the now, in the present moment, is all of us renewing our vows to keep the precepts, Everything has been set up for us so easy to follow. And all you have to do is follow them and wait for the results to come. If you keep the precepts, your life will be safe. If your mind is safe, your life is safe. And that will lead to greater happiness, joy, contentment, inner peace, liberation, and freedom. Liberation is attainable. The Buddha was able to still his mind and achieve liberation. Nowadays, when we look at our modern humans, our neighbors, they're not able to stay calm. They're so easily moved by good things and bad things, so easily moved by things in the media. A lot of people lost sleep over the media. A lot of people lost sleep, lost sleep over tariffs. How their mind jumps backward into history and how their mind jumps forward into anticipating the worst case scenario. That is not peaceful. That is not happiness. And obviously, that is not contentment. And so, the more things we see around the world, the more things we are reminded to go back to the basic practice of samadhi and vipassana, instilling our mind. And the key point here that I like people to reflect on is the stilling of one's mind and how peace is achievable. And nirvana, when we talk about nirvana, people think it's so far and it's unachievable and it is fictional and it is difficult to attain. So if we interchange the word nibbana, Sanskrit nirvana, with liberation, liberation from samsara, liberation from the cycle of viciousness of jumping backwards, the cycle of jumping forward into the future, that right there needs to be examined again so that you can be free of disturbing emotions. And I find that very liberating, and all of us Buddhists around the world find that liberating in observance and celebration of Vesak. So we need not to have doubts when we look at the qualities of the Buddha. We need to see that it is attainable. And if you can't get to Buddhahood, you can get as close as to Buddhahood as much as possible. And if there's a lot to do in Buddhism, but try to cross off as much on your list. And it starts with samadhi. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Trudel, for sharing your insights and talking about the significance of the wisdom of the Buddha and why it's so important for us to understand this unique nature of being Buddha, being the extraordinary human being. So thank you. And next I see Venerable Shanta Sobala raising the hand. So what's in your mind? And I hope you heard me reading the questions, and so feel free to explain. I know you read a lot of sutras, and your readings you may have encountered uh, many other sutras where Buddha himself is talking about, referring to himself as human beings, and why.
Thank you very much, Venerable Sir, and wish you very happy Vesak Full Moon Day for all our participants. And with my heartiest respect to everyone, actually it is very good that we have today this Vesak Full Moon Day and this opportunity, because we all need to remind ourselves the Dhamma and the teachings and the Buddha's message. This is the perfect day for that. And at the same time, as always, you pick up the exactly right topic for today. Because the very reason, what we see nowadays, the most of time we take the Buddhism as a kind of like a reference to introduce the modern world. And at the same time, we are trying to kind of like explain the ordinary conventional level of world should be as it is, rather than understanding it more deeply. So as example, recently I was listening to some conversation regarding this AI and artificial intelligence. There were some professors and they were talking about this artificial intelligence and the AI. In Buddhism also there are certain kind of concept regarding this, and they are trying to validate this conventional level of topics using the Buddha's teaching. It's everywhere, but especially when it comes to psychology and the politics and in even the economy. There is a part now developing in the universities that the Buddhist economy is kind of like that. But what I see is we are slowly getting into kind of like a meaning crisis regarding the Buddha's teaching, because the Buddha is the very important person and he had a very different message to the world. So during Buddha's time, even before the Buddha, people had the idea about the ultimate freedom, but they didn't have a way to gain it. They knew certain kind of way. As example, they knew how the life is suffering, and they knew even the samsara. That's mean the circle of birth, and they didn't have the idea how to get out of it. So the Buddha is the one who really gave the clear answer for that and show the path to get out of it. But what happening today, we are using the Buddha's teaching to modify this conventional world and maintain the conventional life, rather than gaining the very real message and use it to ourselves and liberate ourselves. So when it comes to that, it is very important to remind the Buddha's message, like especially like Vesak full moon day. So why the Buddha himself as a human being and as a extraordinary being, why the Buddha is very special? Because during Buddha's time we see that the most of the religions and the most of the spiritual teaching used to be based with some kind of supernatural powers. So beyond the human hands. It's maybe regarding the imagination, or even as we know, according to the during that time, Sanskrit was the major language, and it was only for certain people to practice the whatever the knowledge used. So the Buddha himself gave the opportunity to each and everyone without any hierarchy, without any class, without any kind of difference, socially, even the spiritually. Everyone, Buddha gave the path everyone to find the freedom. So that freedom is not the conventional level, the freedom that what we look. And at the same time, the beauty is that he went through all the social, spiritual hierarchies and learned himself. And he used to be in the palace and he had a very luxurious life. And then from that point, he went to all the schools during that time. It used to be in that area, Alara Kala Muttagarama, and he mastered that everything. So most of time, what we see nowadays, even in the best universities in the world, most of time when the students go, the most of the teachers saying, you are when the situations come, sometimes the teachers saying, you are not capable to understand what we say. But what happened during the Prince Siddhartha, the teachers used to tell, you are the best that we found out. There is nothing we can teach to you. So that's mean that he himself, that he went through studying and understanding, and during conventional level, there was no one to argue and challenge his knowledge, even the teachers. So then from that point, he went to all other ascetic practice, and then finally he found out his own that the dharma. So which come to the Four Noble Truth, Eightfold Path, and Independent Origination, and in the meditation side, and the vipassana. So that was a very brand new the wisdom to the world, and it came through a human being, not to maintain the conventional world, but to go beyond it. So that's why no any human being able to argue or challenge, but there is only way, only the option was to accept it. So it was more comfortable. All the people used to be around him because it is applicable, and anyone can practice it. And at the same time, it is nothing to do with beyond the human mind, but still it is not this conventional level of human mind. So that's why we have to understand it's still the Dhamma is available. That means the whatever the conventional level of world that we experience as human beings, we are not the people that what we think who we are. There is another version of us we are capable to achieve. So if anybody is able to understand that, there is each and everyone, there is an opportunity to become more better person. Still the Buddha himself, without hiding anything, and very clearly from bottom to the head, that gave the very clear teachings to gain that liberation. So then the one thing that what I see, that through his teachings, everybody able to understand that using their own mind without depending from something. That is a very special that the quality in Buddhism. So because one time Buddha and the Venerable Ananda went for a journey, and on the way Buddha got thirsty, and then the Buddha told Venerable Ananda, go and find some water. So then the Venerable Ananda went, and he saw there was a little small stream, a river, and he went there to get the water. But what happened, before he go there was some bull cart went through that little stream, and the water was muddy. So he came back to the Buddha and told, Venerable Sir, that water cannot drinkable, it's so muddy. So then after a few minutes, the Buddha mentioned, Ananda, now you can go and get the water. But the Venerable Ananda told, no, it was muddy. So the Buddha told, so you go and see, if it is drinkable, you can bring it. So then the Venerable Ananda went, and he saw the same water he saw before. It was muddy and cannot drinkable. But now what happened? The same water, all that mud settled down. Now it was very clean and pure, drinkable. And at the same time, when he brought that water, Venerable Ananda and the Buddha had the conversation. There are some sutras, but there are some articles people talk about this more than the sutras. The articles talk about the conversation, that the teaching himself that Venerable Ananda found out through that example he saw. Because sometimes in our conventional life, our day-to-day life, there are situations come. We think it's kind of like this is the end of our life. This is very difficult for us. And we get kind of like disappointed, unhappy, sad, worried, fearful, and we get anxiety, depression because of this situation. It is look like real. The same like that Venerable Ananda saw the muddy water, it is cannot drink. But still, the same water transformed to more clear and drinkable within very few minutes. So the same like our mind, same like this, our situations that we go through, even though the situations around us, maybe in the moment we can't see it, but there is a way this situation will settle down, and in that very level, and we are capable to experience something else, the very opposite side of it. So this is about our own mind and this is about our own condition of life. So this teaching that what the Buddha mentioned and related to the cause and effect, without any self-centered, egocentric mind, that cause and effect was a very brand new teachings to the world, and it's kind of like give the light to everybody, because everybody was struggling that following the idea of soul, or the unchangeable solid concrete self. But through the teachings that the people understood that there is no unchangeable solid concrete self-centered person inside this experience. So that was a kind of like a breakthrough that most of the people whoever look for liberation understood. It is not somewhere else. It's within our own mind. That's why when it comes to the Buddha's teaching, the ultimacy, Chitta, Chaitasika, Rupa, Nibbana, this whole conditioned world, underneath this, the liberation is there. So only thing is, if we are capable to, without getting attached or without any resistance, if we are capable to go through this perception, what we perceive, then we are capable to understand what is the reality. So these teachings, kind of like when it came through the human being, and it talk about the human mind, nothing about and nothing beyond it. It's about the human mind, and it was a kind of like the greatest recognition, and at the same time, it was the greatest gift. Why I say? Because when I listening to most of the senior monks talk about this cause and conditions, paticca samuppada, most of the teachers telling that when they studied more and more and more, rather than teaching about it, it able to give the more deeper understanding regarding themselves. I used to hear it, and then by the time, Venerable Sir, that when I start to study the Paticca Samuppada, and more, it gave me the kind of like introspection to go deeper, which maybe we cannot bring it to table and talk about it. It's a kind of like, that is a kind of like the teachings that in the Buddha's teaching, because most of time everywhere we are kind of like struggling with teachings. But at the same time here, more than the teachings, it's about self-realization. Because that self-realization, if we are capable to transform ourselves and gain the wisdom to us, that's going to become the greatest contribution to entire humanity. So in that way, the Buddha gave that opportunity each and everyone, because we see in the politics, in the communities, in the the society all over the world, and everybody try to do something to the world, to others. But when it comes to Buddha's teaching, it is rather than doing something for others, it's about more and more and more understanding deeply ourselves and transform ourselves and find our own inner freedom is the best gift that we can give to the world. So in that way, Buddha gave a kind of like a different way of teachings, because when it comes to the Western philosophy also, because they are more into outside world and they talk about the outside situation. But the Buddha is the one who gave the real teachings for each and everyone to find their own liberation without changing anything in this outside world, without struggling, without resisting, without arguing or without fighting with anybody. Transforming ourselves through that situation is kind of like a beautiful way of teaching.
I think that's what almost all, like, let's say, Mahatma Gandhi, even Nelson Mandela, all these the well-known figures in the world adopted that principle, right? And I said the Mahatma Gandhi said, "Be the change you would like to see in the world." So whatever the positive change you would like to see in the world, first that must be seen within yourself. And I think that's what exactly Buddha did, isn't it?
Actually, when it comes to that kind of leaders, of course, in the conventional examples, but still, when we go deeper into their character, in the political level, in the world, they had some kind of white character, but they didn't have deeper self-transformation. Really kind of like a character. When it comes to the Mahatma Gandhi, that we know that he was one of the person go against certain kind of freedom in India, and he didn't accept that. He was kind of like when it comes to the constitution that brought the Dr. Ambedkar, and he went against him. So kind of like that. Of course, in the conventional, that's why in the conventional level, we see a lot of people take the compassion, loving kindness, and even the wisdom, the words, and they try to validate conventional level of this existence using the Buddha's teachings. But what I'm saying that when we go into the real meaning of the Buddha's teaching, that it is something else. And even yesterday, that Prime Minister Modi gave a speech related to this Vesak full moon, and at the same time, the current situation go in the Pakistan and India. And he told that you have to be strong when you go into the truth. But that what he meant by strong is not what the Buddha mentioned. Because he is telling, he was kind of like trying to validate. Being strong means that being more kind of like army and more kind of like the strength to fight each other. No, it's not about having the compassion, love, because if the Modi had the clear understanding about the Buddha's teaching, how he in the very first level, how he stopped the water when the Pakistan and India go against each other. Because if he had the real compassion, and at the same time we know when it comes to the world that in India and Pakistan, this situation is very old. It's a historical war. So, and most of time they make many movies go against each other, and they even when the cricket match comes, they always use the India and Pakistan to hit that bring each other kind of like make it kind of like a more popular match. So kind of like that. If they really look the Buddha's teaching, and I think as human beings, they have the real power today with the loving kindness and compassion to get the real solution. Rather than going to war or rather than go against each other and rather than dominate others, they have the real power to bring the Buddha's teaching. That's why most of the time, even in the economy also, people try to use the Buddha's word to validate their own ideas. That's why even it's not even in the Buddha's teaching. That is the very common level of this conventional world, because it happened to the God also. That's why everybody have their own version of God.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
So that's why what I want to mention when was said that it is very important for us to look into what the Buddha really mentioned regarding when it comes to freedom and liberation. It's not about somebody, it's about our own transformation.
Yeah, thank you so much for actually emphasizing and highlighting that aspect of the Buddha's teaching. That's extraordinary the characteristic that we find in even the teachings, a lot of sutras, even that famous saying, "Attanova avikheya katani akatani." It's not that not looking at others, what they are doing, what they are saying. Rather, you have to do a major paradigm shift to look within. Major paradigm shift to look within. Look at yourself, what you're doing, what you think, and what you say. So the self transformation is part of this extraordinary nature of such an extraordinary being. So thank you so much for highlighting that aspect of the teaching, Venerable Shanta Samana. Next, I see Venerable Nanda from Edmonton, Canada. So, what's in your mind, Venerable Nanda? Happy Vesak to you.
Happy Vesak to you all, Bantes and Venerable Nuns. Thank you for having me here. When I saw the topic of today's discussion, I was very delighted because it is Buddha Vesak Full Moon Day. So it is very important that we should talk about the greatness of the Buddha. So when you raise that question after the presentation, at once my mind recalled a stanza about the Buddha. Once a Brahmin came to the Buddha and asked who he is, and then Buddha, he himself explained and introduced him who the Buddha is. Abhinneyang abhinnatang bhavitabban cha bhavitan pahatabbang pahinang me tasma buddhosmi brahmana. So, which means abhinneyang abhinnatang, all the things that he has to realize, he realized it. Bhavitabban cha bhavitan, everything has to be practiced and fulfilled for the liberation. He fulfilled and practiced it. Pahatabbang pahinang me. So all the things has to be suppressed or overcome. He overcome and suppress them. And tasma buddhosmi brahmana. Because of that, I'm the Buddha. So, which means he's an extraordinary human being. Because even if we say that the Buddha is a human, it is not well said about him, because all human has greed, aversion, and delusion, but Buddha haven't that. So he is free from greed or lobha, aversion, desha, moha, ignorance. So he's not an ordinary human being. He's an extraordinary human. At the same time, in all other religions, only ordained disciples can get the best out of it. But in the Buddha's teaching, both ordained and household disciples get the best out of this teaching. It doesn't matter becoming a nun or monk, or you can practice this teaching as a upasaka or upasika. That is the wonder or wonderful things that we can see in Buddha's teaching. So it is really marvelous and really extraordinary, expounded teaching. So there is nothing to added. There is nothing to cut off. So he had expounded all the teaching balancedly and very profound way to understand and to practice and reaching the ultimate goal of liberation. So it is not for only lay disciples or ordained disciples. It is for everybody, as well as not only humans, but also divine as well. So
humble for all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, no, thank you so much
You're welcome.
for highlighting that. I think what you highlighted was one stanza coming from another discourse from the Majjhima Nikaya, the Sela Sutta, the discourse to the Sela Brahmin. And even in that story, we see Sela Brahmin was so delighted to hear the word of Buddha. Yes. And he was fully aware of, the special.
When I heard from you, I have goosebumps because I read that sutta very fast.
So the Sela Brahmin rushes to see the Buddha. Yeah. But there's a long story. I don't want to tell the whole story. And then he observes, he says that if he's truly the Buddha, extraordinary human being, then these 32 special marks should be seen. And then after observing all the 31 marks, and he was doubting of one more, the 32, the 32nd one. So the Buddha read his mind, and so he was trying to see the special mark, which is the private part. And of course, Buddha revealed himself. Then he realized the fact that, yeah, this is the true extraordinary human being, whom we call the Buddha. Even that's why, even after explaining the true characteristics of such of the Buddhas, Tathagatas, one thing that you highlighted, that is a very beautiful stanza which explains everything. If there is anything to be realized, all that has been realized. If there is anything to be abandoned or eradicated, all that has been abandoned, eradicated. If there is anything to be cultivated and developed, all that has been developed and cultivated by me. Tasma Buddhosmi Brahman. That's why, oh Brahman, I am called the Buddha, right? So that is a beautiful. So thank you so much for highlighting that aspect of the extraordinary human being. Thank you. And next, I see Venerable Dhammarakita from Melbourne, Australia. Good morning and happy Vesak, Venerable Dhammarakita. I know maybe you're fully aware of what we are discussing, but I presented some questions. Maybe you could, for your convenience, let me read the questions I presented.
If I may disturb you, Bante, of course, what I'm going to ask today is, veneration to all the venerable monks here. Yeah. And happy Vesak to everybody. I'm going to ask a question if you don't mind.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, because after listening to Bante Santasobana, he was giving a very nice analysis of how people are going to justify the Buddhism in their own fields. And then he specially mentioned what Buddha has exactly found out and introduced to the world. So my question is, as a knowledge, yes, we accept. And intellectually, yes, we accept. But doing it exactly is what we have got to also consider. Because what Buddha says is, as soon as he enlightened 2000 so many years ago, on a day like yesterday, so far as I'm concerned, for you it is today. and he said, Visankara Gatan Chitta. And in lot of definitions of nirvana, he says Sabba Sankara Samato. So what we will have to really understand also is how we do it. We know the knowledge is there, and how we do it is a good question. So if we can have some discussion, would be very much appreciated. I'm not quite sure. I'm just taking the discussion to some other direction. I'm very sorry if it is the case.
Okay, so Venerable Shanta Sobana, what do you think?
Thank you very much, Venerable Sir, and highlighting that Venerable that Samahita, that question.
That's all gonna say the Samahita, but his name is Dhammarakita.
Oh, sorry, Venerable Dhammarakita. So,
Sorry, Samanita is my organization name.
oh, I see. So actually, that is why it's bringing this and having the conversation is the best way to introduce this, because that is having a conversation is for us to understand and talk about it. So that's why doing this kind of conversation, and at the same time, rather than reading books or rather than having any kind of conference, it's more one-on-one. It's kind of like a more conversation level, go through personal experience and giving the opportunity to other person to understand through their own life experience is the best way to introduce this. And when it comes to this, we no need to, we no need to kind of like address to larger audience at once, because that way it's not going to happen. So this is a kind of like a way that when somebody come to us, or when there is a conversation go through, that if we are capable to have a kind of like a more open mind and look into things rather than rejecting or rather than resisting situations, and if we are capable to analyze that whatever the situation we go through and get the best out of it, so that will give us an opportunity to go through it and become more better people. Because when it comes to the Buddha himself, there is a word called Tathagata. So Tathagata means the person who go through or the went through. So that means he went through all. So that give us a kind of like a clear understanding. If anybody want to understand the life, it's not about the reading life, it is not about the listening, or it is not about the kind of like the follow somebody. It is go through life is the way to understand the life. So preparing the person to get that challenge is the best way when it comes to children nowadays. So parents try to teach children many skills related to subjects and related to different kind of level of lifestyle. But most of time, the parents don't teach them the life. So if anybody learn the life, that person capable to understand it and become more better person and get the best out of it. So same like when it comes to dharma, I think what happened to us on the way, because dharma is not beyond life, dharma is about life. What we miss on the way, we forget to understand life, and we are so busy to understand more other things. So because of that, we miss the opportunity to go deeper into life. So what I think that more than any other thing, if the people capable to understand the very mechanism and the very nature of life, I think anybody will understand what the Buddha told. But most of time what happens, we are looking to outside things and we are going somewhere else, and even we just forget our own life because of that. And when we try to talk about the dharma, it's a kind of like something else for people. People cannot understand it, because if we try to now teach the dharma as a different kind of theory rather than bringing it through the life. So that disconnection create a kind of like a misunderstanding. So that is what my personal experience.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bante. In fact, I was trying to, it is true that we will have to self-realize it. My question is more focused on how we do that. We'll have to understand it through the life. But what mechanism has that really introduced to go to this Sabba Sankara Samato or Visankara Gatam Chittang state? Um, I know it's maybe something funny ideas going in my mind. I just thought of shooting it to the panel. Asra Bante.
Now, if I may I also I think that we have to take that question for another discussion. How to develop a way to Visankara Gatanchi? I think that's a very interesting question. Maybe we will discuss that. But let me. I see. Okay. Bante Kusala, you have something to say about that question?
Hello, Bante. I am in this vehicle with Mother Mahatma is taking me back to the temple. I hope my connection is strong enough.
It's very strong enough.
The question
Bante Kusala actually was going to stay here, but he had to do a compassionate visit.
Thank you, Bante. Yes, we had to visit this patient. I think first we need to understand what Sabba Sankara means. So Sankara has this broader term. We it in three ways. Sankara translates into English as formations, and we have three types of Sankaras. Kaya Sankara, that is the bodily formation. Vachi Sankara, that is the verbal formations. And Mano Sankara, that is the mental formation. And the Buddha always spoke about this, even when he made that statement after his enlightenment, Visankara Gatang Chittam, that his mind went to a state where his mind is freed from formations. And we are touching one of the finest places of realization here. So the technicality of having to explain it, I think, will pose a challenge for us. But this, as we have now discussed in today's discussion, this is a gradual process. I think we begin way before sanskaras. And what I mean by that is that we first have to abandon things like five hindrances, which floods our mind with so many things, and then find a little relief. Abandoning those five hindrances take courage, and we must realize how important it is to let go of these five hindrances that hinder the mind, and gradually reach to a state which is called the first jhana, which has seclusion that is not based on those five hindrances. That kind of seclusion is possible only when you let go of that anger and that attachment and restlessness. So it's only possible through stillness. That means it's only possible through meditation. And then certain realizations that you must let go of speech for you to find relief. That means you are kind of on the middle path, letting go of certain habits that we have and purifying the mind through our actions, seeing karma and vipaka, the action and the results all the time, and seeing what benefits ourselves and what benefits others. So through that middle path process, we come to that stillness of the mind and gradually reach that first jhana level where we abandon the five hindrances, and then we reach the second jhana where we can also subdue our thought process in some ways. And in the third jhanic level, we reach a level of equanimity. And in the fourth jhana, a very much purified equanimity. And in the beyond that level, we find infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception. These are called attainments. And we are talking about those finest levels when it comes to the perceptions in that neither perception nor non-perception level, which is the eighth attainment. There we find sankhara kind of bundled with perceptions and feelings. And can we say that neither perception nor non-perception itself is a perception? And can we let go of that? And by letting go of that level, our mind has, when mind has nothing to be conscious on, no perception, no feeling, it must cease. When it ceases, mind reaches a level called visankhara, a state where no formations can take place. But do we know it at that place where we are experiencing it? It's not possible for us to know it right then inside of that experience. It's only possible to know after emerging from that experience as the discourses reveal to us. So that visankhara state is when that mind is freed from perceptions, feelings, and consciousness, also freed from bodily formations, mental formations, and verbal formations. So that freedom from verbal formations occurred at that second jhana, third jhana level. It does not mean that formations are completely gone, but what we are looking at also is that lust, hatred, and delusion in those have ceased, and that gives us so much freedom to the mind. So I will explain it in a different way. As we were going to the hospital, Madhav Mahatma asked, he kept getting 300 phone calls. So he saw maybe this kind of affected me, but it never did. He was asking, how do we find relief? My response to him was that, can we answer these calls with loving kindness? Can we respond to your children with loving kindness? Right then and there, we are letting go of anger. We are letting go of particle. We are letting go of aversion. In that very place, we are looking at what realization, what level of realization. We are actually looking at anagami realization. That is a state that invites us to be free from aversion, free from particle. We don't have to wait until Sunday to do the practice. Right here and now, by letting go of this very anger that we may be facing while we have to respond to all these calls and everything, we may be able to target on that level and be free from anger, be free from anger when you are talking, when you are doing something. So all the activities never stop in the world. The activities keep coming to us. But can we have a mind that is full of loving kindness and respond to all these things that keep coming our way? So I believe we start there and we start seeing the benefit of it. Who's going to benefit when you have loving kindness? While you're doing all these activities, I think you are the first person to benefit from it. So this way we see that the practice itself within ourselves start to reveal to our own minds that kind of freedom from greed, freedom from hatred, freedom from delusion. So when we say delusion, we are looking at not knowing the mechanism behind the entire process. So for us to be interested in that mechanism, we have to cultivate a level of insight, a level of stillness of the mind that is enough for us to see what these formations, sabba sankhara, all formations are, and seeing what all formations are, bodily, verbally, or mentally, we just have to unpack them. As I said, bodily formation is in breath and out breath. verbal formation is vitakka and vichara. This is translated into English as thinking and examining thoughts, directing them to the wholesome. Formations are Vedana, Sanya, Sankara. So we have Vedana, that is feelings, Sanya, that is perceptions, and Sankara are formations themselves, and there is also consciousness in it. So when those formations cease, there we experience samatho, tranquility of Sabha Sankara, all formations. But we don't see it directly in that experience, as I said before. We only emerge from that experience. Some people try to explain this as a blackout experience in meditation, which can also be misleading. So I believe, these are very much like finest things to ask, and this is a beautiful question. And the Buddha, so these are very much like finest things to ask, and this is a beautiful question. And the Buddha developed his mind, developed his virtues, developed his wisdom, and stillness of the mind, meditative mind, so that he could realize it himself, but he saw how difficult it is for others to see it. He said, Gambiro Duttaso Duranubodo. This is deep, this is hard to see, difficult to realize. Duranubodo. So he was reluctant to reveal this to the world. It's only when Sahampati Brahma realized that the world will be in darkness if the Buddha remained silent and never taught this to the world. So he encouraged the Buddha to see that and realize that there are beings who have little dust in the eyes. That means only little defilements in the eyes. That he encouraged the Buddha to see it himself, and then when the Buddha saw it, he realized, okay, I'm going to teach. I'm going to encourage these beings to keep going until they reach the mental purity. And that mental purity in the finest level is Sabba Sankharas Samato Sabbhupadipati Sako, tranquility of all formations and all clingings, any reason for rebirth, completely disassociated. So that's what I think I can add to in that discussion. If further explanations are needed, I'm happy to explain.
That's actually a great question presented by Venerable Namarakita. I think it needs some more discussions.
Absolutely.
I think what Bhante Kusala presented is also based on the Anapanasati Sutta, when we talk about those 16 steps in Kaya Sankara, Chitta Sankara, all these things. And also,
we can also look at the Vedala Suttas, right? Yeah. 43 of Majjhima Nikaya, and those Chula Vedala and Mahavedala Suttas kind of add into this discussion.
Yeah, I said there's a
Vedala and Mahavedala Suttas kind of add into this discussion.
Yeah, I said there's a discussion between Ramadina and
yes.
Yeah, so they are talking about this Sankaras. Maybe we will take
take those, yeah.
And
but by listening to this thing, I have some questions. So as you say, we will have it for another day.
Yeah.
But now I would like to just present this last few questions. These are kind of thinking questions, maybe, based on today's theme, the topic of the discussion about being extraordinary human being, referring to the Buddha. So, can someone develop qualities similar to the Buddha through practice and effort? What can we learn from the extraordinary life of the Buddha to apply in our daily lives? How did the Buddha's extraordinary insight into suffering, impermanence, and non-self make our daily lives? How did the Buddha's extraordinary insight into suffering, impermanence, and non-self make his teachings unique? How does the Buddha's enlightenment represent a breakthrough for all sentient beings, not just for himself? Very well, Dhammarakita.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bante. Thank you very much for reading those questions out once again, because I was not there at the inception. Yeah, Buddha is definitely an extraordinary human being. That adjective is very important. He's not just a human being. Although he himself has said, I'm not Deva, I'm not Brahma, I'm a human being. But he's an extraordinary human being. Let me start from where Bhante Kusala pointed out or stopped. He was talking about whether this is a bit too deep. He was mentioning about neither perception nor non-perception state. And even before Buddha, people were in that state. And Buddha is also going to the same state. So what we have got to understand is pre-Buddhist era and post-Buddhist era, how the same experience was converted into self-realization. So it is the same meditation we do, it's the same card pack, but he was using a different trump card, so far as I'm concerned. Because after going to that stage, lot of things, and especially in Brahmajala Sutta, he's explaining very well. In most of the cases, people go to that and then identify themselves with it, and they consider that as permanent. Instead of, because they see the very same impermanence, but they consider as permanent because they have been there for a long time. So that was the hook. That was the hook in their practice. So what Buddha did was, he did the same thing, but instead of giving more priority to the achievement he's making, he was keeping the perpetuation of mindfulness. By keeping the perpetuation of mindfulness, you simply become an observer and you never come to a judgment. So therefore, for me, I consider the particular phrase in Satrasatipatthana Sutta, Parimukang Satin Upattapetva, keep the mindfulness to the fore at all times. So when you keep the mindfulness to the fore, when we practice, we will not get hooked up into that particular state. Most of the people who practice achieve that state. After achieving it, they identify themselves with it, whether you like it or not, because subtle mental formations are so clever because they are governed by the consciousness, perpetuation of consciousness. So clever to make an identification. So therefore, he said, avoid formations. The only thing you do is don't decide, don't conclude, don't come to an opinion, don't go to analyze, don't go to interpret. Simply observe. So when you continuously keep observing, in that state, all what you see is arising, passing, which will come to a state where the arising stops because you are not making any new formations. When the arising stops, then you start seeing only the nirodha passing away, and then that will go to a passing away of what is already generated, what is already created. So this is the finding of the Buddha. For me, I consider his teaching, all the teachings that we are talking about, are embedded in these 4 words. Ujumkayang panidaya paripukang satin pattapitva. So that is where you will be able to understand dependent origination. You will be able to understand the 4 noble truths. That is where you will be able to understand Eightfold Noble Path. That is where you will be able to stop making formations. So since he found out that, he has gifted this and he told, Dhamma is your teacher. Once I am not there, Dhamma is your teacher. So Dhamma means, Buddha says, Dhamma is nothing but 4 foundations of mindfulness. Because his equation is, my scope is 4 foundations of mindfulness. And if Buddha is equal to Dhamma, Dhamma is equal to 4 foundations of mindfulness. So for us to go to 4 foundations of mindfulness, we should have the mindfulness to the fore. When we have the mindfulness to the fore, we will not only be with body, not only with feelings, not only with mind, not only with the general phenomena, you will be allowing the mind to go in cycles in all these things. So you will not be hooked up onto anything. And that will develop in Samma Sati Samma Samadhi in a nutshell. So this is what he did. So therefore, he is an extraordinary human being. I think all the questions in the list may be summed up in this analysis. Thank you very much, Bhatt.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable Rakit. I think even Parimuka Satyam Upatapet, I think always that phrase is very important, isn't it? It's like making the mindfulness, sati, the priority in everything. That is in line with another instruction the Buddha said, Sating Upattahiya, or whatever, whenever things happen, always establish your mindfulness. I think that's a key word there in order even to go for the Visankara Gatanchita, right? If that's sati, Vishwa sati is very.
Yeah, what mindfulness is simply observe. So it's not allowing any mental formations also to take.
Yeah. Also, I think there's a sutta in the Sutta Nipata. It's called Muni Sutta. There are even how a Muni, a silent sage, silences all these physical, verbal, mental formations. And so we need to talk about that as well. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. Now I see Venerable Trudel. Your final thought, Venerable Trudel.
Thank you so much. It's everyone's input in observance for Vesak. And I think that people every day can be extraordinary by, well, anyone that's listening at the time of this talk, right understanding is antidote to samsara. Right understanding is medicine to suffering, to pain and suffering. Right understanding is medicine. Right understanding is Buddhahood. When I sit back and I hear all of the venerables contribute with different aspects and insights here and there, mental notes and connecting the dots with everything that's happening with the questions. Every day, certain people play bingo. Some people play bingo every day, and they're looking for it, right? They're like looking for numbers and connecting the dots to scream bingo. But the question is, do anyone out there take notes? Maybe I'm one of them that take notes and try to connect the dots within the Dhamma to arrive to a conclusion of right understanding so that I am closer to figuring out this puzzle of life and understanding. So therefore, I think that if people go back to the basics, the Four Noble Truths, four foundations of mindfulness, and just to realize that with right understanding, which is right view, and right view is right understanding within the Four Noble Truths, particularly the first one, they're going to realize, wow, that alone awakens you in getting closer to liberation. That alone, and the extraordinary part of human is the ability to listen and carefully, and the ability to examine and to observe carefully, to slow down a little bit. And by slowing down, you start to cultivate a very different supernatural power that human have but don't realize. And that will lead you to greater understanding of what we're talking about here, what liberation is. Furthermore, Bhante Shantasopana talked about, when we Bhante Shantasopana talked about, when we speak about these Dhamma language to people, do we even make the connections? And I wanted to leave this last thought with our listeners across the world. When a monk says, or actually, I'll just use me as an example. Have you partied before? Yes. Do you know what it's like to love and to be loved? To love someone and to be loved? Yes. Have you drank before? Liquor? Yes. Okay. Have you ever been at peace before? Do you know what it's like to be at peace? What is happiness to you? Happiness is the absence of sadness. Contentment. Tell me what that is to you. Ah, I think the conversations and connecting the dots lies there. And because that will conjoin the teachings of the Buddha together, breaking it down to elementary questioning and elementary understanding of it. I think a lot of people don't stop to think about these things. What does it mean to be happy? You know, a lot of people run after money, run after these superficial things outside of them versus what is inside of us. And that's what we've been talking about is, you know, returning back to oneself, the art of stopping. And if you could stop today, that makes you extraordinary in comparison to your counterparts and neighbors because they just don't know where to stop or when to stop. I'd like to leave that last note. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, thank you, Venerable Trida. All right, so we have come to the end of today's discussion on Vesak Day, and it was amazing to have the discussion on the topic Buddha, the extraordinary human being, and I'm very grateful to all of you for sharing your insights with our audience. So, and of course, I think discussing the Dhamma is also a way of honoring the Buddha through the practice of Dhamma, what Buddha taught. So I think that's what he highly praised. So, so being able to honor the Buddha through that Patipatti Puja and by discussing the Dhamma taught by him is a very kusala karma wholesome deeds. And so on this day, let us also recite the, uh, the key teachings of the Buddha, known as the Ovadapadama verses, Ovadapadama Padesana. So I would like to invite Venerable Buddhadatta from Ohio, USA, to recite Ovadapadama verses for us today.
Sabba papassa akaranam කුසලස්ස උපසම්පදා චිත්ත පරියෝදපනං ඒතං බුද්ධාන ශාසනං තන්ති පරමං ඉතිංකා නිබ්බානං පරමං වදන්ති බුද්ධා නහි පප්පජිතෝ පරූපගාති සමනෝ හෝති පරං විහෙතයන්තු අනුපවාදෝ අනුපඝාතෝ පාතිමොක්ඛේච සංවරෝ මත්තඤ්ඤුතාච වත්තස්මින් පන්තංච සයනාසනං අදිත්තේච ආයෝකෝ ඒතං බුද්ධාන ශාසනං.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much, Venerable Buddha, for beautiful reciting those bottom of the verses. That was truly a form of meditation practice for us. is all Buddhanasati, Dhammanasati, Anganasati, all the reflections. So I'm very grateful to all of you, all the venerable monks and nuns